Most people think a market crash is the biggest threat to their retirement, and they're wrong. It's a line item in your budget that you even haven't written down yet. You see, online retirement calculators, most of them will tell you how much you can safely withdraw, but none of them explain to you how much you're guaranteed to lose. You see, there's a math problem in the middle of your portfolio that none of your financial advisors will even touch because it's not quote unquote market related. You see, if you enter your mid-70s with what I call a wealth leak, meaning your body requires some professional intervention just to function, guess what? The 4% rule doesn't matter. And no amount of compounding interest will make any difference. I did some research, and a 5-year stay in a semi-private assisted living facility currently averages over $400,000 in the United States. That's a direct after-tax hit to your principal that no bull market is going to outrun. You see, this isn't a market crash. What it is a maintenance failure. And by the time you get that bill, it is too late to negotiate. Today, we're going to look at the actuarial reality of a term called health span, and ignoring it is the most expensive financial mistake that you're going to make. You see, I didn't realize how fragile my own plan was until I saw a simple knee replacement for a friend and the financial impact it had. I'm navigating the same distribution phase of our lives that you are. I'm not a doctor. I'm not some fitness expert. I'm just a guy who's trying to do the best in his retirement. Last week, I spent some time digging into the insurance premiums for long-term care insurance policies and comparing that to self-funding that risk. And I got to tell you, the results are sobering. And so from that, I realized that the biggest risk to my comfortable financial retirement wasn't a market correction. It was this thing called health span. You see, I've seen peers who have done everything right. They've saved the money, they've invested in bonds and diversified in index funds, and did the very best that they could, only to see all that work and all those assets absolutely liquidated over 48 months by a stay in an assisted living facility. You see, they didn't lose their money in the stock market. They lost it because they treated their health as a lifestyle choice instead of what it really is, a capital expense. I refuse to let my wealth span outlive my health span because my goal isn't to be the richest person in the nursing home. My goal is never to be in the nursing home. Every time you lose a physical ability, it's what in the assisted living community they call an ADL, or an activities of daily life. Every time you lose one, a subscription fee is added to your retirement budget. In the financial world, you hear all the time about hidden fees. Well, in retirement, the absolutely biggest hidden fee is a dependency tax. Think about it. If you can't get out of your chair easily, if you can't navigate your stairs, if you can't drive to go get groceries, you've got to pay someone to do it for you. So think about it. Currently, in the United States today, home health aides range somewhere between $25 and $40 an hour. Now, and I get it, right? Even that's a pretty conservative number. But if you need just 4 hours of help every day over the course of a month, that's $3,600. And that means over the course of a year, that's over $40,000. That over $40,000, that's an invisible tax on your retirement. And that's not a tax that has anything to do with the Internal Revenue Service. So think about it. And here's really the kicker in this. If you can't maintain your functional mobility, what are you doing? You're essentially shorting your own portfolio. You're betting that, guess what? I'm going to die before I become expensive. That's a dangerous bet. We need to start looking at our bodies as the infrastructure for our portfolios. If that infrastructure fails, then guess what? The portfolio has to be rated to take care of it. So what if I told you that 30 minutes of maintenance was worth more than a 1% improvement in yield on your entire portfolio? So let's look at the independence dividend. All right, that's the money that you get to keep when you remain functional. So take a minute and think about this. Every year you stay out of an assisted living facility, by maintaining your own functional strength and balance, guess what? You've added roughly $100,000 back to your net worth. If you spend 30 minutes a day on your functional mobility, you're not exercising, you're hedging against a $400,000 wealth leak. So I'm not pulling these numbers out of thin air. This is the cold, hard math from the industry's actuarial data. So now you might be wondering, hey, where is he getting that $400,000 number from? I pulled this data from the Genworth Cost of Care Survey and then cross-referenced that with the National Center for Assisted Living. When you get to look at the 2026 projections, the median base for an assisted living center is $6,000 a month. Okay, but what the shiny brochure doesn't tell you from the facility is that's just for the room. Once you add back in care tiers, that's TIERS, care tiers, that's things like medication management, that's like help with dressing. You're easily looking at $7,000 a month. Over 5 years, that's $420,000. If your condition requires a semi-private room in a skilled nursing facility, that number easily jumps to over $500,000. So you know what? This isn't a worst case scenario. This is the median. This is actually the middle of the road. So you may be thinking to yourself, oh, that's somebody else. Here's more research from the National Institutes of Health. Most people who reach older age will need some paid or perhaps unpaid long-term services or support at some point. Their estimate, someone turning 65 years old has a 70% chance of needing some type of that care in their remaining years. Going on with the research, they estimate a lifetime risk of dementia of 42% after age 55. Now, some groups, their number is even higher. For example, let's take women. Women have a higher lifetime risk because they live longer. 48% of some type of dementia. Here at Brain Flash, we call that the retirement survival tripod. You cannot balance on just one leg. If the physical independence leg snaps, then the financial solvency leg has to carry the entire weight. And that leg is going to break eventually under the pressure of medical bills and care costs. So in my case, I had to map out how to rebalance my physical 401k, if you will. I realized I was spending way too much time watching CNBC, listening to podcasts, or quite frankly, doom scrolling on social media. I wasn't spending enough time on figuring out how I could walk for 2 miles when I was 85. You know what? That's really bad risk management. So I've identified the 5 questions that'll help you understand if you're heading towards that dependency trap. So how do we fix that math in the first place? We've got to move from instruction to recognition. So I had to sit down and create for me a maintenance audit, if you will. I had to ask myself, can I get up off the floor without using my hands? Can I carry my own luggage? Because if the answer is no, my dependency tax just went up. So I put together a maintenance audit, if you will, for the first 24 months of retirement, 5 questions to ask myself and see where my wealth was leaking through my health. So I asked myself these 5 questions recently, and I didn't really like the answers, but I'd rather face a tough answer right now while I can still train for it rather than having to pay the bill for it 10 years from now. So here are the 5 questions that make up your independence audit. Question number 1, can you get up from the floor without using your hands or the furniture? So what's the big deal? This is the fall recovery test. If you can't get up independently, guess what? A minor trip and fall becomes a 911 call. It becomes an ER visit and an immediate transition to managed care. Independence starts with the ability to self-rescue. Question number 2, can you carry 2 bags of groceries, let's call it approximately 20 pounds, up a flight of stairs? This measures what? It measures your functional logistics. If you lose this, You're forced to pay now for what? Delivery services, home modification like a stair lift, or moving to a single-story managed facility decades earlier than you would have to otherwise. Question number 3. Are you still comfortable driving at night or maybe in heavy traffic? Loss of mobility is the number one driver of social isolation decay. We get lonely. That leads to what? That leads to cognitive decline. Again, one of my biggest concerns. Once you can't drive, you then have to what? You have to outsource transportation. Uber, private drivers, facility shuttles. It becomes a permanent monthly drain on your budget. Question 4. Could you live in your current home, all right, if you were unable to walk just for a short period of, let's say, 3 months? This tests your home infrastructure. See, most retirees are overhoused in buildings that, quite frankly, become prisons during a temporary injury. If your answer is no, then guess what? You're one slipped rug away from a $10,000 a month rehab center stay because your home wasn't functional. The 5th question, do you have a crisis captain, somebody who's not your spouse? If your spouse is your only caregiver, a single health event for one becomes a double collapse for the both of you. You need a designated person, a child, a friend, a professional who knows your financial and medical blueprints to prevent what? Prevent panic-based and, quite frankly, expensive decisions during a crisis. So when it comes to exercise, look, we're not trying to be elite athletes, all right? We're just trying to maintain our independence. You see, independence, what does it mean? It means you own your time. You own your ability to move and to think at your leisure. Look, don't be the person who worked 40 years to fund the nursing home's profit margin. You see, some suit and tie gurus will tell you to rebalance your portfolio to a, call it a 60-40 mix. I'm telling you, you need to rebalance the investment in yourself. Look, the math is clear, even if it's uncomfortable. We really don't manage money. We manage the risks that take that money away. So look, let's keep the independence we worked 40 years to earn. We earn the money. Now let's make sure we're around to spend it on our own terms. I'm Stan. I'll see you on the next one.